was inviting you to introduce yourself and explain a little bit more about the business segment that you are active in Africa.
Sure. So I'm Irene Calve, and I'm one of the co-founders of Sunkofa Energy. So in Sunkofa Energy, we work into the development and operations of mini-grids. So basically, just to the people that are not aware, mini-grids are solutions for energy access consisting on a generation unit that can be powered by solar energy, but also by mini hydro, for example, and a distribution grid in a village. And then the clients can pay the electricity and they can consume all the electricity. So the good news is that we can power from the small clients that are just using electricity for lighting, but we can also power what we call productive use. Those are the clients that are using productive machines to generate income. So basically milling machines, welding machine, and all these kind of machines. So we created Sunkofa Energy 1.5 years ago with 4 other co-founders. And today we have been working mainly in West Africa, and specifically in Benin, where we are trying to set up a project of 40 mini-grids.
Thank you very much. Another representative of the off-grid sector today is Justice. Justice is active in a slightly different field. Justice, can you tell us more about Bbox and your activities there? Justice, I believe you've muted yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, John. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
And thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Yeah, my name is Justice Mucho, and I am the Managing Director of Bbox Rwanda. For some of you who are not familiar with the solar home system off-grid industry, Bbox is working in 12 countries in Africa, and Rwanda is actually one of our very first markets where we have been active for the past 6 years. Yeah, so we have connected only in Rwanda over 100,000 households, and that actually contributes to more than 5% of the country's electrification. Also, a bit of context, off-grid alone in Rwanda contributes close to 15% of the country's electrification access rate. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've covered with Irene and Justice, we've covered the off-grid sector, but we also have representatives of the large-scale solar industry with Varun representing Sterling Energy. Sterling and Wilson, sorry. Varun, if you could tell us a bit more about your activities here in Africa and globally.
Sure, John. Thanks a lot, and warm wishes to our listeners. Thanks a lot, John, for inviting us on this platform. My name is Varun Sharda, and I look after the business development for Middle East and Africa for Sterling and Wilson. For the listeners who do not know about Sterling and Wilson, basically we are a solar EPC company from India. We've got operations for the last 90 years in the EPC segment in India. We started solar photovoltaic EPC in 2011. Since then, we've got an experience of close to 9 gigawatts, out of which 6 are already commissioned and 3 are under construction, and about 6 gigawatts of operation and maintenance. We are the world's largest EPC, having credited to building the largest solar plant in the world, which is the 1.2 gigawatt solar plant in Abu Dhabi. In Africa, our operations are about 700 odd megawatts across 7-8 countries across the continent, commanding a share of about 40% in the continent. Overall, market share is about 4.5% globally. So yeah, look forward to talking with the panel.
Very good, thank you. And before I move on to JP and Rob, I will ask Victor to also unmute himself so that he can give a quick introduction about the company he's representing today.
Thank you very much, John. And I thank you very much, the listeners. So my name is Victor Koyier. I represent a company by the name Jinko Solar. I'm the sales manager for Jinko Solar, covering East, West, and Central Africa. For those who don't know Jinko Solar, so Jinko Solar is the largest and most innovative solar module manufacturer in the world. We are listed in New York Exchange, and typically we distribute solar products, and we cater for different markets. And one of the key markets that we look at is utility, commercial, industrial, and also in some extent in Africa, we're also looking at the mini grids, which are the decentralized solution. In terms of Jinko Solar, we maintain overall #1 position for 4 consecutive years. We have 13% global market share in 2019, that is last year. Since inception, we've already deployed more than 55 gigawatts delivered till 2020. We have fantastic, unique products that makes us the leading module manufacturer. Namely, we have different types of products, such as Tiger, which is one of the key products that we are pushing in. We have Cheetah, and also we have Swan, which comes on a bifacial. And a bifacial is also a very key product for utility projects. So if you're looking down in Middle Eastern Africa, we maintain the #1 market share, over 26%. As Varun has mentioned about the largest PV in Abu Dhabi, the 1.2, we supplied to that. So it makes us one of the largest PV manufacturer with a market share of 26%. So how we operate in Africa, we have a multifunctional team of 19 people that are key in each and every role. So Jinko Solar, as I mentioned, it's one of the largest, and I'm looking forward to discuss and interact with you.
Thank you very much, Victor. And last but not least, we have not one but 2 representatives of Eversheds-Sutherland today, with Jean-Pascal and Rob. Please tell us a little bit more about your company and the work you do in the solar and wider clean energy space in Africa.
John, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be participating in the webinar today. My name is Jean-Pascal Boutin. I'm come from Eversheds-Sutherland. We're an international law firm, and we've advised over 10 gigawatts worth of renewable energy projects. Myself, I head up the international regulatory team. So I advise on the regulations and how to adapt the most appropriate contract structure, i.e. power purchase agreement, for those regulations. And across Africa, we've advised a number of utilities and also advising on corporate PPAs, both ground-based and rooftop solar. If I can hand over to Rob.
Thanks, JP, and good afternoon, everyone. So just to pick up on a point from JP there, I think the 10 gigawatts that we've done is in relation to solar projects rather than kind of all clean energy projects, and I think that's of the order of about 50 gigawatts. But I'm also a partner with the firm and specialise in construction and engineering aspects of these projects. And within Africa, we've advised on transactions in Egypt, in Cameroon, Senegal, Nigeria, Mali, Guinea, Kenya, and South Africa. Most of these have been acting on behalf of the developer of those projects, but there are a number where we've acted for the EPC or the government. And as JP said, they have both the bigger utility scale projects, but also some of the smaller off-grid and private PPA arrangements as well.
Thank you very much. So yes, as your introductions have highlighted, I'm very happy to have you join us today, because you are active in a multitude of different countries. And what we see in the news is that different countries have reacted differently to the crisis. What I would be interested in hearing from you is if you've also been exposed to this diversity of reactions within the countries that you operate in, and how this actually affects or doesn't affect your operation right now. Maybe we will start with Irene. If you can tell us a bit more about the specific situation in your different countries.
Sure. So in our case, it's not only the difference between countries, but also the state of development in which we are. To give you some examples, so on the mini-grid basics, you first need to select a village to build a mini-grid. Then you need to engage with the village and understand the demand of this village to build your mini-grid, to know the amount of PV panels and batteries that you need to install, and then operate it, so collect payments, etc. So in our case, in the case of Boutin, we are right now trying to understand exactly what the demand will be in order to go for a request of the amount of PV panel and batteries we need. So right now it's been quite difficult because there's some kind of semi-confinement. So all the zones around the capital are closed, so you cannot get out or get in, which is really a problem for us because we need to be on the ground. We need to do surveys to ask to the people how many hours do you want to use your light bulb, or how many hours do you, and we cannot do that work right now because we have a local team in Benin, but they are in the capital. So that's a problem, and it's not only the decisions of the government, but it's also a problem for us because if one of our employees is at some point contaminated, and it brings that into the village, that would trigger a huge reaction from the side of the village, which I can understand. So we are quite blocked there. And even we are trying to start procuring some materials. It's not that easy because right now there are delays everywhere. First of all, on the supply from China, now it's been fixed, but the last month has been very difficult. And the thing is that there are delays, cumulated delays everywhere. So that's the case of Benin. In other African countries, we are into more a tendering phase. We are answering to tenders. We are starting to develop projects. And then it's the same situation. We need to go to visit the villages. We need to handle some files by hand. And all of this has been completely blocked, not only for the people in Europe, but even the people based in the countries are not able to go on rural areas anymore. To give you one example, we had a tender in which we need to submit a memorandum of understanding signed with the local communities. We cannot get back to the community. So we are trying to put in place some kind of mechanism to do it digitally via WhatsApp or other tools. But to be honest, it's been a great challenge.
I can imagine. And coming to you, Varun, so whenever your teams work on site, they are of bigger sizes. It's more like industrial activities rather than sending a few individuals to the village. How has your experience been with those teams in the different countries where you currently operate?
John, I think we've seen quite a lot of varied levels of lockdown and restrictions across the globe. For example, what I understand is in India and Africa, there's been a much more stringent lockdown measures that's been put up. In countries like Australia, in countries in Latin America, the level of lockdown hasn't been that stringent. So the teams have stayed locally within the village, within the site where they've been working, and trying to sort of, work as much as possible to the best possible ability that they can. But yeah, coming to the point of Africa, we've got projects in Kenya, which has been absolutely shut down at the moment because of the lockdown situation. That's sort of hindering a lot of progress. It's sort of affecting the progress. As Irene mentioned, the same situation was with us. Majority of the components are coming from China, and towards February, mid of February, we were starting to face dispatch delays because of COVID situation in China. As now we're seeing that the development and the production and dispatch has started picking up in China, but the problem is the other side of the supply chain link is now broken. So as to say that the host country where the project sites are there, the port clearances, the inland transport, all of them are at the moment very, very fragile. So at the moment, the biggest challenge for us is to sort of match the deliveries based on predicting when the lockdowns would be lifted in the host countries, because you don't want your material to be at the port stuck and end up paying charges on that. So that's the level of challenges that we're facing in the projects. Of course, wherever possible, where we have the deliveries completed, dispatches completed, we're trying to do, and we are trying to make up the schedule by completing the local works first, and as much as possible, as much as the schedule permits. So yeah, that's the level of challenge that we're facing across our projects.
Thank you very much. And moving on to Justice, again here, different way of organizing teams. Justice, you in your line of business, you generally have very, very large teams of sales representatives who go across all different villages or different neighborhoods across town. And I think you've told me in a previous discussion that you operate in countries that have fundamentally different approaches to the lockdown. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, thank you very much again, John. So, like I mentioned, we work in about 12 different countries in Africa, and actually each of those countries has been different in a way that the government has put lockdown measures in place or not. So some countries have a curfew that starts from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m., the likes of what we have seen in Togo. Actually, even Kenya started with a curfew, and now they are being a little bit more stringent. So Rwanda, very specifically where I am based right now, has been one of the very first countries to have what I would call a total lockdown. So what have we done? So in our nature of business, we actually have teams distributed across the country in wherever we operate. These are teams doing installations, or sales agent teams. Rwanda alone, if I look at our staff plus our agent base, it's very close to 500 staff. So this has been really a very challenging time. So what we have managed to do, and what our other companies are trying to do before they get into this position, is to make sure that as part of government identifying essential services, that we can be part of this. Because we do actually provide essential services, and we strongly believe this. During this period, we do not want to imagine customers that cannot have access to electricity, access to their phone being charged to get information, access to TV, radio. So we have been able to provide minimum support through our call centers. So in Rwanda, we managed to get quick approval to operate our call centers. And with that, we've also managed to technically find ways to get our call center to work remotely. However, our field teams have not been able to work. We've continued the discussion, and there's actually a very good chance that if the lockdown is extended, we will be identified as essential services, and our teams will get the right passes to allow them to move. In a place like Kenya, actually, they have worked together as an industry ahead of time, and they have been labeled as essential services. So they will, the impact will be very minimal in terms of movement for the team once the lockdown is enforced fully countrywide. So like I said, it's very different, but of course we have already started seeing the impact on our customers, their payment patterns and behaviors changing, and we're trying to be supportive of customers, but it's a very challenging situation.
Thank you very much. Yes, the industry effort to be recognized as an essential service is something very, very interesting. There was a call for action in this direction launched earlier this week by the Alliance for Rural Electrification. I think if you get a chance, it's worth taking a look and going through this call for action, and of course support it if you are behind it. and hopefully we can get throughout Africa in the same situation as the one you've just described for Kenya. Victor, Rob, and Jean-Pascal, I think you are in a slightly different position than the previous speakers in terms of being able to operate remotely. Personal and direct contact with your customers, of course, is very important. But I think you're maybe a little bit less exposed to this lockdown, and as we are seeing today, you seem to be very well and comfortable working from your homes. Can you tell us a little bit if there has been an impact on your business lines, and if so, how it expresses itself?
Well, thank you, John. So if I can answer the particular question, so we as a module manufacturer, we rely a lot on logistics. So as the three panelists have already mentioned that there's issues related to essential services. So we've seen a couple of countries, yes, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, coming up with this particular issue whereby you need to have a certificate so that you can get your goods out. But the thing is that when the goods are arriving at the port, we as a manufacturer, we also have some issues related to that, because there's always issues related to delays. So it's not the typically way of doing business. So you can have an issue whereby the port will have a long delay in terms of sanitizing, quarantining, or typically ensuring that the people that are bringing the particular goods in the country, they are well healthy. So that's one of the key things that we've seen in this part of the world, a little bit of a delay. But also to some extent, we also try to support some of our customers in the essence of trying to come up with container freight stations whereby they can easily put the goods within a specific period of time. So because that's in essence, you're trying to reduce the cost on the demurrage, because demurrage cost is also very expensive to the end customers. So that's one of the key things that we are trying to facilitate. But also, as we do facilitate that particular issue, we also need also to be extremely careful for country specifics, because you might end up shipping a particular good, and then the goods arrive and then the country is in lockdown. So what will you do? So what we've done is that since I mentioned that Jinko, we have professional colleagues who are in Africa. So we have a massive network in Africa where we try to check specific updates related to the port of entry. And with that, we are able to mitigate issues related to demurrage or any other issue. But the other thing also, we also try to establish as a company, yes, it might sound that good that we cannot fly or we cannot go to the customers specifically. So for us, which is something which we are providing, is that we are trying our best to ensure that our customers understand and know the particular products. It's more of a training that we are trying to do now, creating the capacity to the market, because this market is typically a new market to many technology. That's one of the key things that we're trying to drive in this particular case.
Thank you. And Jean-Pascal, you are in a line of business where proximity with your clients is important. Some discussion and mutual understanding needs to happen, and historically it always works well when everybody is in the same room. How are you coping now with this situation? Are you able to get as far with online systems, or do you find other strategies to go around the current limitations?
Yes, thank you, John. I think predominantly it's very much business as usual. we are relying very much on all these apps. We suddenly become specialists in, Teams, Zoom, and WebEx, and lots of others. But it is business as usual. It is obviously, especially negotiations and meeting new clients, it's better face to face. But I think everyone's managing really well. And yes, it does make projects more difficult, but I think we're getting there. It's very much business as usual. Rob, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I agree. I've been quite, I think everyone and across all sectors has adapted to the situation in terms of being able to carry on as best as possible very well. Obviously, we have the advantage as lawyers that we deal in words, which is fairly easily to do on an online basis. So as JP has said, we've been able to carry on as best as possible as we were before. I guess the big kind of change really is the focus on force majeure type provisions in contracts that are currently being negotiated is now a very different proposition. I think that now will be as a result of this event moving forward. So that whole, that discussion of that contractual risk obviously is a big topic at the moment. But in terms of the practicalities of working day to day, it's been okay.
Well, actually, it's good you mentioned force majeure because yes, this is a very hot topic in everybody's mind. Could you please explain a little bit more about this force majeure clause and in which circumstances it actually can be used and enforced? Because it's an expression that many people and many of the listeners know, but I'm sure there are some intricacies and specificities of this clause that can or cannot be applied in different cases. Can you give us a little bit more insight on this?
Sure. You're right. It's taking up a huge amount of bandwidth at the moment, as one would expect. I mean, looking at it from, I guess, a construction, an O&M type context where I see it the most, I think, as a starting comment, the position is always going to depend upon the drafting in the particular contract, and it's important to understand the detail of what that says. But in terms of some general principles, I think in most cases the situation that we're currently in is likely to qualify as force majeure, and most contracts that have a force majeure concept in them, where I think there is the difference and where I think there will be debate on projects is around what impact that force majeure event needs to have before a party is entitled to relief. So often a contract will say that a party is relieved for force majeure if they are prevented from doing a particular action, and generally that will be taken to mean that it's legally or physically impossible to do it. So if you could still comply with your contractual obligations, for example, but it will cost you more money, then you are required to, by and large, to spend that money in order to try and fulfill your obligations. So where there is that prevention requirement, it can be quite difficult still to access some FM provisions. Other contracts have a kind of lower hurdle, so they may say if a party is delayed or hindered by the force majeure event, and then generally there it's going to be easier to be able to make the claims under the contract. I think the other important point to note is it's not just force majeure, there's also change in law considerations, and they will vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but in some cases the restrictions and the distancing and the various other arrangements have come about by a change in law, and the contract will generally deal with that differently and will often be more generous for change in law than it will be for force majeure. I think probably the final point that I make is that on a lot of the projects, certainly the bigger utility scale projects in Africa, you have a concept of force majeure, so a concept of equivalent project relief, which is broadly saying that the contractor or the operator doesn't get relief for force majeure unless the developer also gets it under the PPA. So you have that kind of whole interface and pass through of the risk, and that is kind of slowing down. We're finding that the resolution of some of these issues on a number of the projects. I mean, JP may have a different view and different experiences from a PPA angle, but certainly from the construction side, that's what we're seeing.
Yes, just from the PPA angle, first of all, looking at the developer's point of view, obviously the developer's in quite a difficult position because they're essentially in the middle. They've got the EPC contractor claiming force majeure, and the developer will try and resist that. But at the same time, the developer will wish to ensure that it is able to claim force majeure under the PPA as far as the offtake is concerned. We're having to break down, as Rob implied, we're having to break down exactly what the consequences of COVID are. Is it a change in law? Where did the change in law occur? Because quite often, if it is a change in law and it's a local change in law, then you can claim compensation from the off-taker. Whereas if it's a change in law, for example, in China, then you can't necessarily claim compensation. So we're dissecting each country. What exactly are the consequences of COVID? What exactly are the changes in law? And can you mitigate? So, for example, one project we had, again, it was early days, there was supply chain issues with China. So there, the developer secured the panels from another country. So those are the sort of things, they're quite drastic, but those are the sort of things people are being forced to do. But yeah, so there's on the PPA very much, you are looking at, both sides, as it were, defending force majeure claims and then protecting your position and making sure you can claim them. We're also, lastly, seeing some off-takers starting to make force majeure claims. So these are more state utilities, and there it's quite interesting and difficult, and we think it's pushing the boundaries a bit. But there the off-takers are saying, look, they're suffering financially because of COVID. So even though it's a take and pay obligation under the PPA, they're choosing to use COVID as an argument for not paying under the PPA, which is incredibly difficult and we think is very dangerous indeed.
Thank you very much for those clarification on contractual aspects of projects. I'd like to go a little bit away from contracts and go more to humans now. In the current situation, everybody would agree that the first priority is really like health and safety. I would like to hear a bit your thoughts about what you are, which strategies you are currently putting in place for helping to protect the staff that are still able to work, whether it be client-facing or on-site during the construction. And maybe we can start with Irene. You've already described a little bit about the challenges of getting to site, but what are the strategies you put in place to ensure that everybody remains safe and sound?
So for the moment, the main strategy we're using is to stay at home. So we kind of cancel all the site visits we had in all the countries, and we tried to make an opportunity from this and work on things that we didn't have the time and that were urgent and important. So data processing, applications, and like a bit the back kitchen. So we are focusing on that, which is something we needed to do anyway. But the problem is how long is it going to last? Because the ideas we have right now, and I think it's a bit what Justus mentioned, is around the idea of energy and electricity as an essential service. So my first question would be, how long is it going to last? Because yes, we can hold on certain visits, but for a delimited amount of time. At some point, we are going to need to go back on the ground, and especially not only for our company, but in general, if we want to achieve SDG 7 by 2030, if we stop all the development, the consequences won't be on the short term, but on the medium term and on the objectives, on the global objectives, we are going to have a problem. So that's something, if this situation goes on and on for at least some more months, we need to start thinking about that. So what we are doing right now is, apart from going from home, trying to forecast what will happen in that situation and try to act on it. So we are starting discussions on what is the meaning of electricity as an essential service, and if with the authorities of the countries, and the willingness of SDG 7, and how can we find the middle ground? Because this is not like in the case of justice, like we need to operate something. This is development. So it's not the most urgent, but we need to do something about it. So we are working on that. And secondly, we are thinking, once we go on with the field surveys, how can we do it in a safe way? So there's a part of using obviously gloves and masks and everything, but there's also a huge part of, let's say, pedagogy and education, because you can imagine someone that comes into your village completely covered with gloves, with masks. There might be some problems and some resistance from the village. So we need to explain what we are doing, how we are doing, what are the means of protection, and engage with the villages. So we are working on those main fields right now.
Thank you very much. And you, Varun, you work in a segment where health and safety is already very present, even without the COVID crisis. But because of this crisis, have you started to apply new safety measure and protection measures on your site? How is it organized nowadays?
Yeah, John. So I think this health and safety is of prime importance, for us at our work sites, whether they are the construction sites or whether we are doing the operation and maintenance. But with this outbreak, we've sort of stepped up on our efforts. We're following the typical, requirements which are coming from the various international bodies. We're ensuring that the sites are, we're ensuring that, our teams are well taken care of. We have sanitizers, we've got gloves. Because if you see, whilst the, construction sites are a bit delayed or slowed down or shut as well, the operation and maintenance sites, being called as essential services, are continuing to operate. We've not stopped any of our projects which are under maintenance. So we've got our site teams there as we speak. They're the ones who are right at the forefront, living in those difficult situations amidst all, all the uncertainties and anxiety. So what we have done is we have prepared a, pandemic response plan, which has two aspects. One is to take care of the health and safety. As I mentioned, what all we need to do. Along with this, to ensure that the business continuity plan is being developed. So business as usual has to go on whilst ensuring there's zero compromise on the health and safety. A couple of things that we did, keeping in mind these two, aspects is, so we recognize which are the critical and key resources which are required in every team. We ensure that that is the person who's involved and mobilizing around. The other resources are being grounded, but they're available through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or other platforms. So that's one way of segregating them. What we've also done is at the moment in our plants we're focusing on absolute critical activities. We're not focusing a lot on the scheduled maintenance, which our experts are sort of pushing it back, to come to do it at a time where we can do. So that way we are prioritizing our activities to ensure that with reduced manpower, we are still able to focus on the activities which are required to ensure that the plants are up and running. What we've also done is in various of our sites, we've divided our teams into two teams actually. so that even though reduce manpower, but the two teams sort of act as a main and a standby team kind of a situation. So we've put them, we've arranged separate guest houses for them. We've arranged to isolate the two teams so that, they're not in contact. The entire team is not in contact with each other. That sort of, reduces your downtime in terms of your company's operability. So this way, if one of the team, if any eventuality happens in one of the teams, the other team is there on standby to ensure that the link is not broken and the business goes on as usual. So, with maintaining about 6 to 6.5 gigawatts worldwide, it's important that, our clients rely a lot on the fact that, we are there maintaining and running the plant, at these times. So that's very important for us to ensure that there's a continuous flow of operations maintained, while of course, ensuring that none of the health and safety guidelines of the respective country, of the respective city or village is followed to the T. So yeah, that's the way we are, sort of handling the situation. And our leadership team is at the moment speaking to all the team leaders in the respective sites, in the respective countries, because these times are difficult, right? People are anxious, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of uncertainties. So it's important to counsel them, to nurture them, to ensure that, they feel connected to the people back home. So that's the way we are trying to, tackle across the situation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very, very interesting to hear about the life on site and those strategies that are being put in place. Justice, I'm guessing your situation is probably a little closer to what Irene was describing earlier. But can you give us a little bit of more insights on strategies for safety that you may have put in place for your teams, not only in Rwanda but also maybe from your colleagues in other countries?
Yeah. Thanks again. First of all, John, I agree with your initial statement. Definitely, for us, the health and safety of our staff, our customers, and the entire community comes first. So whatever we are trying to do or making sure that we can support customers, definitely we will not do it at the cost of the safety of anyone. So what have we been trying to do? Obviously, Rwanda, actually, the lockdown will be 1 month old this weekend. So it came in earlier than many countries. But before that, we had actually already some measures in place. So at all our shops countrywide where we have customers walking in or a few staff working at that station, so we put at the door, we put in place hand washing stations. Obviously, we are working very close with government and all the recommendations from the Ministries of Health and the World Health Organization. So we have not reinvented anything except working along those lines. So we had hand washing stations at all our shops or service centers, whatever you may call them, and we did not allow more than one customer inside the shop interfacing our staff. And all the recommendations on keeping distance, I think there was 1 meter, we recommended 1.5 to 2 meters to our staff. But those are kind of the different things that we were doing. And for every staff, this is before the lockdown, that could have worked from home, we made sure that we had all the tools in place to allow our staff to work remotely. Obviously, this comes with some challenges, internet being unstable some days of the day or in some locations. But those are some of the things that we have had to deal with. Obviously, during the lockdown, there is no other major measures except stay home. But now that we are talking about resuming our operations in Rwanda, now that we are actually getting the right approvals to have some level of operation to support customers, we are actually trying to work with the industry and the government to have a set of guidelines. For example, in Rwanda, they encouraged everyone to transact on mobile money or bank. Basically, they discouraged cash transactions. This means that mobile money agents were allowed to work and banks as part of essential services. So the Rwanda Utilities and Regulatory Authority actually put guidelines for these mobile money operators, which is, keep this distance, do not touch the customer's phone, wear a face mask all the time, talking to another customer. So we are also working together as an industry to actually have our own guidelines for our staff when we resume. Because on the other hand, we need to be responsible as companies and responsible as industries, because otherwise you don't want to be seen as the company that is taking coronavirus from door to door. And on top of that, we are also looking at, obviously, how can we support communities and governments, and this is different per country as well. Most of the companies like us are vertically integrated. We have strong supply chain in place, so we could support with some sourcing or some countrywide logistics. Those are some of the discussions that we are having, and we're still trying to see how this could work. But this is really, from what we have observed, different country to country, because the response of countries has been different. The level of organization and the level of resources is also different. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice. So until now, and I'm looking at the clock, until now we have all shared about the current situation and the current impact. But to go a little bit further than this, I would like to also look forward and get your diverse opinions about what we may expect next, once the situation is over, once we get back to normal, if there will be such a thing. I would be interested to hear how you view the future situation, and I would like to ask this question to Victor first, because Victor, I've had several discussions over the past few days with different project developers who are all wondering about what's going to happen with the module price. Everybody's really worried. There's been a little bit of slowdown, but now they're afraid that everybody will be ordering at once and that this will jack up the prices for panels. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see the situation from the manufacturer point of view?
Thank you very much, John. So in related to the issue on pricing, so what we've seen on the global aspects is that in particularly most of the projects have been put on hold due to various restrictions on specific countries. And yes, there might be sort of like a gradual drop, maybe, but we think that this situation might come maybe to some halt with bearing the specific timing that China did. I think China had this situation for the past 77 days. So we think there'll be a gradually slow down in the market in this period, that is Q2. And then we certainly think Q3 will be booming in terms of business. But more specifically, if you're looking at the African market, it will be still a fragmented market yet, because we are seeing quite a lot of governments looking at their coffers. They're trying to bring out some stimulus package for the citizen. And if that's so, it simply means there'll be a little bit of an issue, more or less, in terms of moving forward with the projects, because most of the funds would be typically used to address this particular issue that we are at the moment. And furthermore, if this issue continues, we are seeing, and as we speak, we are seeing a little bit of issues related to some enaction of law, particularly on duty for renewable products. So we might see some countries trying to impose VAT to at least get some of cash inflows to ensure that they are well financed. So there's a lot of, let's say, fragmented issues that will happen. But one thing which I'm very clear is that in terms of the health sector, as you know, Africa health sector is one of the key things that we need to drive in. So we are seeing a lot of governments trying to support the health sector by doing sort of solution-based services in electricity by putting a hybrid solar for the facility, solely because of supporting their citizen in this circumstance, per se, like isolation. Yeah. So also to put also in perspective, as I wind up, is that also as a company, Jinko, we also understand that we will be there and we will be supporting some of these customers. So we are working with them, and in that essence is that Jinko as a company, as you may know, is that we've donated 1 million face masks with PPE globally. Some of them will be coming to Africa per se. So we also putting a seed, or we're also supporting in one way or the other in terms of not alleviating, but also trying to support this particular epidemic, which is something that we don't know when it's going to end. Yep.
Thank you. Moving on to JP and Rob, and we have several questions specifically for you about the future and what comes next. Some of these questions are about maybe evolution of contracts. Should people stop signing contracts of in take or pay and take and pay clause? So how do you see that aspect? Other questions also about allocation of risk. Definitely everybody is aware of a significantly bigger risk nowadays, and I'd be interested to hear like how you see contractual frameworks evolve in this respect.
Yes, thank you, John. Well, we're doing quite a few live projects at the moment where there is a lot of focus on the force majeure and the change in law clauses. And we foresee those projects being delayed because from the off-taker's point of view, and actually from the developer's point of view, it's not very good to sign a contract and immediately, as soon as you sign the contract, claim force majeure and change in law. And as the other speakers said, we don't know when the end, we don't know the end result yet. It's still a very live issue. And as an off-taker, you don't want to sign a PPA and the developer immediately claims additional costs. So I think ultimately a lot of projects being delayed. We're aware of a lot of tenders being delayed as well. And also we're seeing, especially in Africa, some local currencies being devalued as a result of COVID, which again is going to have an impact on the PPA because a lot of the time the pricing is pegged to the dollar. So that's going to be an issue for the off-taker. So yes, a lot more concentration, I think, on the FM and change law clauses. I mean, in answer to your specific question, take or pay or take and pay, at the end of the day, legally, you get to the same result. As long as you get paid, you don't mind exactly how it's construed. But yes, I think the other thing we've seen before, and I think we'll see more, is thresholds in terms of change in law. So it's only if the impact has greater than X impact will they be able to claim change in law consequences. But yes, I think we're definitely on new territory. I think there's going to be new standards set on the contracts in terms of these provisions.
Maybe just to add that we have actually signed a deal since COVID has come about. So we have actually had to resolve this issue and contractually allocate the risk whilst the issue has been known to everyone. I would say that was without a bank involved, and so it did make it somewhat easier. But generally what we're seeing is that buyers of services or works under contracts are fairly sympathetic to the situation when it comes to having relief from a time point of view. Where it's become more difficult is around compensation, insofar as there's any greater impact moving forward from COVID, and the solution that we found in the project that I mentioned was effectively a cost sharing arrangement if there was any greater impact than is currently known as a result of COVID. But I do also want to pick up on one point that JP mentioned earlier on in terms of its potential impact on the market, well, in Africa, but everywhere, which is governments looking to try to utilize force majeure or other provisions to not pay under PPA agreements, and there are in some jurisdictions local laws that can be relied upon to try to get to the same position, because I understand why government's looking to do that. They have cash flow issues, there's a reduction in demand. However, the potential impact on that, on the investment market and on the ability to secure debt moving forward is huge, because if people do see governments looking to avoid agreed pricing on take or pay or other type arrangements, I think it's going to be very difficult in those jurisdictions moving forward to secure financing and get institutional equity into those countries. So I do think that governments need to think long and hard about the longer term implications of some of the steps that they're contemplating at the moment in terms of trying not to pay under current projects.
Thank you. And Irene, maybe, the same question, but from a slightly different angle. The off-grid industry is characterized by a multitude of relatively smaller companies. How do you see their future? Is there, for example, a risk that not being able to operate some of these will actually have to close business? Do you think there are some mitigation strategies possible to put in place? How do you, as a board member of ARE, see the situation, and what do you get back from your member companies?
The situation is complicated for a lot of us because, first of all, most of the companies in the energy access sector are small companies or startups. So it's not like we can afford a lot of time without revenues. And that's the case, especially the ones targeting the bottom of the pyramid. They have been very affected in the countries where there are confinements and people have to stay at home. Most of the income of these people relies on basically what you can sell during your day. And if you are close at home, you can sell anything, so you don't consume electricity. So obviously, the more you target the bottom of the pyramid, the more you are being impacted right now by the COVID. And then there are also problems on the side of financing. For the moment, I will not call for a problem in liquidity, but there is a problem, which is that for any finance of project or of a company, even for corporate finance, you need to do some due diligence. You need to be on the ground. Most of the companies providing that money are not based in the countries and need to be able to fly for this kind of due diligence. That's not a possibility right now. So again, on the short term, ARE with his call for action, but also AMDA and Gogla trying to put in place solutions. But I think it's going to be rough for some companies. But on the other side, and a bit with your previous questions, I think that this is also going to bring some opportunities. Like for instance, it's the first time they close down all the borders in the world like that. And most of the countries are being more and more aware of the need of being able to produce locally, to be able to transform locally. And I think that for off-grid and especially for mini-grids, this is going to become an opportunity on everything related to agriculture and the link between electricity and agriculture for irrigation, for example, and to produce locally. And also in all the parts of the health centers, what we see all the time on the field is that most of the health centers don't even have lighting, proper lighting. And I guess this is going to trigger an opportunity, and also from the DFIs, an intention, as we see already from the call of the World Bank, to electrify those health centers. So yes, there's a risk, but we can turn the situation into a future opportunity, I would say.
Okay, very, very positive view on the situation. It's great to hear. Varun, on your side, and I'm taking one of the questions from the listeners here. Do you think, similarly to what Irene just described, do you think there will be some countries that will see this crisis as an opportunity and realize their real need for becoming more independent with large sources of renewable energy and kind of fast track some projects? Or do you think these kinds of projects are unfortunately stuck into their lengthy processes and the crisis won't really impact the general track of such a project?
Well, John, the issue here is, from what I see, is that COVID resolution of COVID does not just happen in a day. It's going to take, at least 2 to 3 months or 4 months after, the lockdowns are lifted for things to get normalized. And in my opinion, opening up the borders would be towards the end of, the complete resolution. So yeah, I see a lot of delays in the projects, which is already started in. IHS Markit recently took out a report where they sort of reworked on their forecast of capacity additions this year, which is definitely lesser than what's going to be what happened last year. So in terms of countries understanding the need to embrace renewables, solar and wind both, of course, that doesn't stem from just COVID. It stems from the wider cause of reduction of carbon emissions and relying more on non-polluting fuels. So in my opinion, yes, there are a few countries which were poised to go on a fast track had this COVID situation not have come out. We've seen South Africa bracing quite steadfastly on embracing the renewable energy. It is in spite of notwithstanding the COVID situation, the country was in need of additional power, and they were well on track. And in my opinion, they still are. They're doing whatever they can in spite of the lockdowns to ensure that the road work from here until release of tenders and auctioning does not get impacted. But it's only time which is going to tell once things open up and how quickly they can sort of come back to track. So yeah, a few countries which I think should do in the SADC region would be South Africa, maybe Tanzania, maybe Botswana. But yeah, I think we all continue to take stock of things, sort of every week, because things are so ever dynamic that it's difficult to, kind of predict when things are going to get back to normalcy. So yeah, that's what I feel.
Thank you very much, Varun. I'm looking at the clock again, and I see that we've already fully used our 1 hour time slot. I do have maybe one quick last question. Victor already mentioned about his company donating some masks as an emergency support to some countries. One of the listeners is asking more broadly from all of you, if you are engaged into some CSR, corporate social responsibility. Of course, this is particularly important in this context now. But yes, he would like to know a little bit more about any initiative that you may be supporting through the different projects that you are doing, whether it be training or specific support to local communities. Is there anybody who can develop on this?
Jan, on this, maybe I think it's worth it to mention the initiative from ARE. So ARE is the Alliance for Rural Electrification, and I'm one of the board members. And I know ARE right now is working on some health clinic, I think they're calling it, which is a program to help train local installers, but also local entrepreneurs that want to go into energy access sector and provide training and guidance to these people. So all the members of ARE can volunteer to provide some training and some specific skills to the entrepreneurs in the local regions.
Very good. Good to know. So yes, definitely, if you wish to learn more about this, visit the Alliance for Rural Electrification, ARE, website. Anybody else on this topic of CSR? Justus, maybe?
Yeah, just to maybe comment on some of the things, actually, give an example of what we have done in DRC for our operations in Goma and Bukavu. We have actually donated to provinces hand washing stations that are mobile, as well as bulk of hand sanitizers. Yeah, all of these actually were made locally, which was a good thing. And obviously, being the company and the brand that is out there, we're participating more. So we're also using what we are doing, our call center, to educate. So basically asking to be the semi-experts, if I may say, if customers have a specific question on COVID, and our call center need to be trained well enough to direct them on to the right source of information, or guide them how to do about that. So this is something in early stage in terms of the training. Ourselves, we need really more training to make sure that our staff are in good position. But those are some of the things that we could do, is, you know, educating our staff and our customers, but also providing some PPE equipment where possible. Like I said, it's government to government. Like in Rwanda, hand washing stations hasn't been an issue. These were put in place straight away before anyone did. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe Victor.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. So apart from this particular donation of face masks and PPE that we are currently doing in Africa, the company is also supporting 6 other clinic isolation centers in West Africa. So we'll be donating PV modules to support this particular pandemic by ensuring that the guys who are going to be heading to the isolation, they have energy to use for their daily use. So it's something that also we've done. So currently we are trying our best to ensure that these particular PV modules are supplied within the quickest time.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I see we have well overpassed our 1 hour time slot allocation, and I would like to thank everybody who has been listening throughout this webinar. In the old world, as we used to know it, I would ask a big round of applause for our speakers. But I guess we will use our imagination, and I'm sure that everybody would join me in really thanking you all for accepting this invitation to share your experience and to share your also advice in these very peculiar times. I hope we will have the chance to host you again very soon. There will be more webinars coming up with AFSIA and with also other entities and partner and friends from the solar industry. And of course, I invite you to visit our website or social media pages. We try to be as thorough as possible to share all possible news about the solar industry in Africa. And we will welcome any comment and any message. Thank you very much again. Have a wonderful weekend and all the best.